Awesome. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Ralph. I'm the minister here at First Christian Church. And I'm really grateful everyone showed up. I know we've had a snowy week. I know it really hasn't been the most pleasant week when it comes to the weather, but we have a wonderful evening planned for all of you who made it out tonight because we have Alexandra Hudson here who wrote an amazing book, The Soul of Civility, which our congregation, First Christian Church, has done a reading of over the last 3 weeks. We've read through the whole book. We've had questions and answers, and we've really done a wonderful job, and we're excited about it. Alexandra is, well, her reputation precedes her. She's known pretty much around the world, I would imagine. She's spoken at the UK House of Lords, the Yale Law School, the Canadian Parliament, the Texas State Legislature, which is where she's headed next. And she is also writing a children's book as of right now, correct? Mm-hmm. So she is well-versed when it comes to civility, when it comes to understanding how we can interact with each other as humans and disagree, maybe not disconnect or dehumanize each other. I know you didn't come here to see me, so you came here to see Alexandra, so I'm going to give the floor over to her so she can get as much time as possible. Now, what I will say is after she's done giving us her book talk and walking us through civility, we have an opportunity for Q&A. So I will have a mic. If you raise your hand, I will come around with the mic and you can ask whatever question you want and we'll do our best to answer them. Also, afterwards, there are some books for sale. Alexandra will be available for you to ask any questions. She'll try and answer any questions that you may have. We also have like little treats outside, like cookies, fruit, things like that. So if you're hungry, thirsty, please feel free. That's on us, and we're not going to charge you for it. So, yeah. Without further ado, Alexandra Hudson, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you to your congregation for being so welcoming and hospitable and hosting us tonight, and for bringing me in and making this investment in your community. And thank you to Shelbyville and the broader community. Those of you, I talked to several of you who don't worship here, but came anyways. And thank you for being here. Thank you for braving this weather. You are the true believers. You are the remnant. We did it. My name is Alexandra Hudson. I am passionate about the way that ideas and storytelling can change people's lives. And I am on a mission to foster a widespread social, intellectual, civic renaissance in our world right now. And I need your help. That's why we're here to talk tonight. How do we flourish across difference? What does that look like in practice in our own deeply divided time? To some extent, I've been thinking about this question my whole life. My mother, I'm not joking, is called Judy the manners lady. Imagine being raised by the manners lady, an etiquette expert. So I learned very early on how to cut my food, how to shake hands, how to mind my P's and Q's. And I always questioned it. I always questioned everything. I am constitutionally allergic to authority. I hate rules. I hate being told what to do. And so every time my mother would tell me to do something just so, I would say, why? Why do we do things the way that we do them? Other cultures, other parts of the world, they don't eat with forks and knives. They eat with chopsticks or eat with their hands. Why do we do it this way? And my mother would say to me, I'll never forget it, this is just the way we do it. Now do it. And those questions, that answer never satisfied me. I've always kind of hungered for the why behind our social norms and why we do things the way that we do them. So I've been wondering these questions my whole life. I generally followed my mother's rules of propriety and expectations because she promised they would lead to success in work and school and life. And she was right. Until I found myself in federal government. I lived and worked in Washington, D.C., 2017, 2018, and I found myself in the heart of darkness, in the swamp, as they call Washington, D.C. I went in as someone who loves ideas, who loves beauty, goodness, and truth, and the life of the mind. My parents are both autodidacts. They're lifelong learners. They're self-educated while also being formally educated, very curious people. Had a really robust intellectual life growing up. And I went to the Department of Education because I loved learning. I loved education. It was my big break. I was just out of grad school, and I couldn't wait to make America's education system just a little bit better. And I could not have been more disillusioned or discouraged by what I discovered. I saw these two extremes when I was in government. There was an extreme hostility on one hand, people who would step on me and anyone who got in their way in order to achieve their goal. And I knew to stay away from those people. And there was another contingent, though. This was the polite contingent. They were polished and poised and nice. But these were people who would smile and flatter me and others one moment and then stab us in the back the next. I remember one day I was sitting in my office, minding my own business, and a colleague came up to me and said, "Lexi, you look great today, and you're so brilliant, and by the way, I need a favor." I said, "Okay, what do you need?" And he said, "I'm a little bit behind on this project, and would you please help me finish it?" I said, "Sure, happy to help." I didn't realize he had not started the project. And wanted me to do the whole project for him, but I was happy to be a team player, and I completed the work. He took my work, passed it off as his own, and that wasn't even the worst part. He took all the credit, took the meeting with the secretary associated with doing the work, even though he hadn't earned it. But the worst part was after he got what he needed from me, gone were the pleasantries, gone were the compliments, gone was the flattery. He cast me aside. And I remember feeling so used in that moment. And I had some words that my mother had often repeated growing up where she said, "Lexi, manners matter because they are an outward expression of our inward character." And yet here I was surrounded by people who were polished and poised and polite, but ruthless and cruel. I lasted one whole year in federal government before I left. And I remember upon reflection, I reflected on these two extremes that I had witnessed and observed while in federal government. Again, the extreme hostility on one hand and the extreme politeness on the other. And I realized that while they seem like polar opposites, they're actually very similar. They are, in fact, two sides of the same dehumanizing coin. Both modes, the extreme viciousness and the extreme politeness, fail to see other human beings as they really are. Beings created in God's image, created with dignity and equal moral worth, worthy of a bare minimum of respect, just by virtue of our shared moral status as members of the human community. Full stop. The hostile contingent sees others as pawns to be silenced and steamrolled into submission. The polite contingent sees others as pawns to be manipulated, as I had been, and discarded the moment one no longer serves their purposes, but both insufficiently appreciate the profound gift of being human in ourselves and in others. And that is the crisis that we're really living through right now, the true crisis. It's not just a crisis of hyperpartisanship. It's not just a crisis of division and disagreement. We are living amidst a crisis of dehumanization, where again, we insufficiently appreciate the gift of being human in ourselves and others. And that is why I refer to my book as a humanistic manifesto, extolling the profound gift of being human, the dignity and worth of every single human being. My experience in federal government also clarified for me an essential but overlooked distinction between civility and politeness. Whenever we use these words today or hear them used today, they're often used interchangeably, whether people want more civility and politeness or less civility and politeness. They use them as if they were the same word, but they are not. Politeness, as I define it, is technique. It is what we do and say. It's etiquette, it's manners, it's external stuff. Whereas civility, can we bring up the next slide, please, sir? Is a disposition of the heart. It is a way of seeing others as our moral equals, worthy of respect just by virtue of our shared dignity and personhood. And sometimes actually respecting someone, actually loving them, requires being impolite. It requires engaging in a difficult conversation. It requires telling hard truths, engaging in robust debate. That's actually sometimes a duty of citizenship. But not doing so in a way that degrades the personhood and the dignity of the other. I love etymology. Raise your hand if you know what etymology is in this room. Yes, ma'am, back there. Yes. Go ahead, or someone just shout it out. Go ahead.
It's like the search of the origin of being in.
Absolutely it is. You're correct. Yes. Etymology is the origin of our words. And often the origin of our words tells a story. So the etymology of civility and politeness tells a really important story about these words. Again, today we often use them and hear them used as if they're the same word, but they're not. And the etymology shows us that. Any classicists in the room are going to work with me on this? The etymology of our word politeness and our word polite is, any guesses? Etymology of polite, origin of our word polite. It's polire, which means to smooth or to polish. Sometimes when I ask these questions, people shout out, oh, it's polis, as in like the Greek word for city, and we need politeness to be in a city. And that's actually not true. They have nothing to do with one another. It comes from the Latin root polish. And that's what politeness is and does. It's technique, it's external stuff. It smooths over difference. It sweeps it under the rug, as opposed to giving us the tools to grapple with difference head on. The etymology of civility. Any guesses? Anyone want to shout out some options there? I heard someone whisper. I'm comfortable with long silences, everyone. I will outweight you. It is civitas. It is the etymological root of our word for city, citizenship, citizen, and civilization and civility. And that's what civility is. It is the mores, the disposition, the habits befitting a citizen in a city. And especially in a democracy like our own, that requires debate and disagreement and truth-telling. And this is what many people don't realize today. Yes, we're in a crisis of division and dehumanization, and there are many worthy efforts to heal our divides and promote unity. But division and disagreement is a feature of democracy. It's not a bug. Perfect agreement is not the goal. but rehumanizing one another across deep difference, bearing in mind the human dignity of the person that you are disagreeing with. That is the goal. Who's ready for a game? Okay, next slide, please. So we're going to play a game called Are You Civil or Polite? But I added a third option as well called Are You Hostile? Because I wanted to really tease out that distinction. But we're going to call the game Are You Civil or Polite? Okay, next slide, please, sir. Okay, the mispronounced name. Scenario, you interact with someone regularly and they keep mispronouncing your name or get your name wrong entirely, which happens to my poor husband, whose name is Kyan. He gets Kian, he gets Cohen, he gets all these names, poor guy. And we all joke it has strengthened his character because no one has ever gotten his name right. So what is the polite thing to do? Sorry, I don't know why this is moving. The polite thing to do, say nothing to avoid awkwardness and quietly curse the other person. The civil thing, correct them kindly and give them the chance to get it right. And then another chance. And another maybe. The hostile contingent, correct them sarcastically and let them know that you're annoyed and offended. Next slide, please, sir. Cutting in line. Someone cuts in front of you in a long line, or if you're watching Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm, they do a chat and cut. Do you know this one? This is when they pretend to vaguely know someone in the line, and they say, oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, how's your wife? And they slowly sneak in line, and Larry David says, not on my watch. You get to the back of the line, sir. This is civilization. What do? You stay quiet and stew about it afterwards. Calmly point out where the line begins and assume they didn't know. Oh, you may not have known that the line is back there, kind sir. Or confront them aggressively and embarrass them in front of others, maybe like Larry David would. Make an example out of them. What do? Are you polite? Raise your hand in your room. You're polite? Oh man, we have some work to do in here, Ralph. Are you confronting them aggressively? No? No one confronted them aggressively? No Larry Davids here? I'm disappointed in that too. You need a few Larry Davids. We have to work on that. I see. It could escalate. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Or do you calmly point out where the line begins? Okay. Some civilized people here. I see. But you do speak up. That's good. Okay, next slide, please, sir. Thanksgiving dinner disagreement. A relative says something at Thanksgiving that you strongly disagree with. The polite thing. Do you change the subject, ignore them, keep the peace? The civil response. Do you engage them respectfully, ask questions, and state disagreement without attacking or dehumanizing them? Raise your hand. These are questions. No? You stay, what did you do? Are you polite? Who's polite? Who does the polite thing? I see, yep. Or the hostile contingent. Call them an ignoramus, attack their character, intelligence, and motives. Okay, next slide, please, sir. Yeah, exactly. Okay, the road widening bike lane. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
And you've got family members, you know that they're improper and they will just exploit the situation. I draw to politeness just to get through somehow. And I'll see that because they choose to be dysfunctional, they choose to make that, they know I don't even know.
Yeah.
This I be.
So I hear exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you that, drawing a bright red line around the Thanksgiving dinner table and say, we're not going to talk about politics here, That I would say is civil, because civility is not just about respecting the humanity and dignity of others. It's about recognizing and respecting yourself enough to stand up for yourself, enough to say no, enough to risk offending and disappointing someone rather than saying yes or listening and gritting your teeth at Thanksgiving and silently resenting them. That's not polite. That's not loving. So it's and we can have a whole conversation about our crisis of misplaced meaning and how we have made a religion out of politics. And that is one reason why we see politics everywhere, including our family dinner tables, which is hurting society and ourselves. We'll return to that because it's a really important point. So thank you for that question. Okay. So they're widening the street for a bike lane. And this is from my community where this happened. And my neighbors got in a tizzy. They're like, we hate bikers. Nobody bikes. So the town is widening the street for a bike lane. And, neighbors don't want to lose parking, and cyclists want to bike. They're like, we need to be able to bike without being like risking our lives. And don't bike in Indianapolis, everyone. It is a risky proposition. I don't know how it is in Shelbyville here. So what do? Do you stay silent publicly and complain privately and gossip with your friends about how annoying bikers are and those like fitness, crazy people who run Ironman and all these things? They're annoying, right? Do you show up to meetings, speak plainly about your concern, honestly voice your opinions, and acknowledge real trade-offs and the humanity of the decision makers without attacking people you disagree with or the leaders making decisions? Or do you become a Twitter warrior? Go online, mock the other side, berate them publicly, or yell at your neighbors and your leaders until you get your way? Polite? Okay, a few. Hostile? Good, you're in the right place. You're here. Yeah. Civil? Good. There you go. That's okay. Thank you. So this crisis of dehumanization, we see it on both sides. We see it in our public discourse where some people, we know that there are bullies in our public life. There are people who are willing to do and say anything in order to own the other side, in order to win. And then there's another contingent that is so exhausted by the hostility and the division. They just want no conflict, and they're just going to paper over all the difference, never talk about anything controversial. But both can be equally as dehumanizing and equally as destructive to our democracy. And that's why civility is the bedrock of our democracy, this third way. Civility is the art of human flourishing. Again, it is the bare minimum of respect that we are owed and owe to others by virtue of our shared dignity and personhood. It is more than just politeness and manners and etiquette. It is how you treat people, not just those you like, not just those who agree with you, and not just the people who can do something for you in return. It's how you treat the other, the stranger, the person who doesn't look like you, who doesn't think like you, the person you may never see again, the person who can never repay you, benefit you, do anything for you in return. That is the hallmark of true civility. This is the most important question of our day. How do we flourish across deep difference? And yet, this is a timeless question. This is the defining question of what it means to be human. As long as we've been around as a species, we have been coming together in groups. We are doggedly social. We thrive in relationship with others. We become our best version of ourselves and more likely to survive through collaboration and cooperation. And yet, morally and theologically, we are driven to meet our own needs before others. And those two facets of who we are, of what it means to be human, are in tension, the social and the selfish. It has always been thus, and it always will be. It's a timeless problem. And guess what? The solution is also timeless. And the solution is civility, as we've been defining it. It is the voluntary restraint of our own desires for the sake of the flourishing of others and of society. Any bibliophiles in here? People who love books? Any librarians? Can you guess what is the oldest book in the world? Yes, you go. That is the oldest story in the world. There you go. But bonus points for reading my book. Well done. The oldest book in the world. Anyone else read my book in here and want to show everyone how brilliant you are? The oldest book in the world is given to us from ancient Egypt, 2350 BC. And it's called The Teachings of Ptahhotep. And it is a civility handbook. And the beautiful thing about Ptahhotep's maxims, well, first of all, I'll tell you a story about Ptahhotep. He was an advisor to the ancient pharaoh. So he was, second in command, and he had been in the room where it happens, if you're Hamilton fans, his whole life. He had reached the pinnacle of earthly power and success. And in fact, he was so wise and kind and beloved that the pharaoh said to him, Ptahhotep, I want you to be pharaoh when I die, not my son. And Ptahhotep declined that offer of absolute power and retired to his pastoral farm. And he thought about this question of the good life. What is the stuff of human flourishing? And he wrote pen to paper because he did care about public life, and he did want Pharaoh's son to be a wise and just ruler. And so he wrote down these maxims, these 37 maxims about the life well lived. And the remarkable thing is that even though this book was written 4 millennia ago, it could appear in a Miss Manners column in the Washington Post today. Many of these maxims, they are timeless tidbits for wisdom and flourishing. They're conventional wisdom, like don't be good to others. Don't be kind and nice to your friends and neighbors just when you need something. Be good to them and gracious and kind all the time. He says, don't abuse a power differential. If you have authority over someone, be above and beyond generous and gracious. He has about 5 or 6 maxims that prohibit slander and gossip. He says, do not malign someone's reputation behind their back. Be honest and kind. I love this one metaphor he uses. He says, be profligate, be generous as long as you live. Just give. Your legacy will be a crown of jewels, which is so beautiful. I love that visual of like the seeds of generosity we sow being a crown of jewels. Don't mind my mixed metaphors. That's me. That's not Ptahhotep. Sorry about that. So timeless problem, timeless solution, and it's civility. But it's still really easy to feel hopeless. It feels like we're in this moment of unprecedented violence and division and dehumanization. And there are so many forces in the world right now that want to keep us feeling powerless. But I have good news for you. Every single one of you here in this room has way more power to be a part of the solution than you realize. And I'll tell you how I know this. Indiana taught me this. I remember the day very clearly. I had had a particularly despondent day at work, and I came home and said to my husband, I am done with DC. I'm done with toxic politics. I'm done with the swamp. Let's move to Indiana. And I'd been here a few times. My husband's from Northeast Indiana, from Fort Wayne area originally. And but I didn't have any roots here. I just wanted to be anywhere but Washington. And I had in my mind the bucolic pastures and farmlands of the American Midwest. And I wanted peace and tranquility and not toxicity and division. So my husband smiled and looked at me and said, sounds good. No takebacks. And a few months later, we were out here. And 7 years later, we're still here. And 3 beautiful children later, we're not going anywhere. And I remember, and maybe you felt this too, whenever you go into a new place, a new city, a new job, a new church, it doesn't quite feel like home. You have to work to find your place, to find your people, to cultivate your niche. And we started attending a church that we quite liked. And one of the first times we visited, a woman who kind of reminded me of my mother, tall, lovely, blonde woman, came up to me after the service, and she extended her hand and said, "Hi, I'm Joanna Taft. Would you like to porch with us sometime?" And I had never heard the word porch used as a verb before. But I was curious, and again, we didn't have many friends in town. And so we accepted her generous invitation, and we porched with her that Sunday afternoon. And I saw something radical happening on Joanna's porch that day. She had curated people on her great big front veranda, people across geography in town, people across race, political persuasion, religion, not to be, representatives of their race or political party and to have these structured differences. It was just a place to be a human being with another human being. It was an oasis from the labels and the division and the toxicity. It was a place to be seen and known and loved right where we are. And Joanna always likes to say, even people who live in big cities or dream of living in a big city, they still long for a small town, a small community in their heart. And that's what the porch was. It was a quiet, subversive, it's what it is, a quiet, subversive rebellion against our atomized and divided status quo. It is Joanna and others like her that I have observed across the country saying, I cannot control what is happening in Washington, D.C., in Minneapolis, tragedies across the world. I can't even give in control if my road gets plowed during a snowstorm. But I can control myself. And every single one of us has way more power to be a part of the solution than we realize. Because I saw it across the country. We don't even need a porch. A porch is just the metaphor of this way of life, of transforming outsider to insider, stranger into friend, of creating with your life and what you do have a restful oasis from the toxicity and the division. And again, that can take many forms. I've seen it at an event, a book event in Miami. We were at someone's front dock. And I said, we're porching right now on their dock. So it's people across many different walks of life. Some people host supper clubs. Some people have a stoop or a front lawn. I've met people who host office hours at a local coffee shop. Every week at the same time, people know that that is where they can come for community and to be seen and known and loved in the fullness of who they are. And we can do that too. Every single one of us in this room has way more power to be a part of the solution than we realize. And people are realizing that. There is a movement afoot to reclaim our civic power, to reclaim our agency, and to start close to home, where our work truly matters and where we truly have power. Kind sir, do you have the link at all? Did you get a link as well? No, not that link. Okay. No link tonight. That's okay. We'll send it to you maybe in the follow-up email. I had a video to show you. You got it? Okay, let's do it. The Civility Summit. Okay, perfect. So this is to show you, just give me 1 second. This is to show you this movement that I invite every single one of you to be a part of. Starting right here tonight, to envision this evening, this conversation right now, not as an end in itself, but as a part of a beginning, a part of something bigger, a movement where Shelbyville is flourishing and where our differences are not dividing us and bringing out the worst in us, but they are tools and a catalyst for progress and enlightenment and flourishing, because that's the promise. Disagreement doesn't have to end relationships. Again, disagreement will always be with us, but it has the possibility to bring out the best in us if we keep the humanity and dignity of others front of mind. As soon as my book came out several years ago now, October 2023, I had leaders reaching out to me saying, what now? I read your book, but how do I embody it here? I want to live it in my community. And I said, I don't know, but let's build something together. And that's the work that I've been doing for several years. And this shows the work of one community. You may have heard of Carmel, Indiana. And so Carmel, I had a city council person reach out to me there, and they said, we want to live this out here. And my first thought was, Carmel has a civility issue? Like I thought the greatest crisis you had was like, what art installations are going in your roundabouts? Like what? But yes, the culture wars had come to Carmel. They'd had a really vicious kind of school board election. I mean, I live downtown Indianapolis. Ralph's been to my house. Like, Carmel thinks I live in the hood, and I think they're a bunch of like suburban snobs. Like, it's hard to get anyone from Carmel to like come downtown to where they're like, is it safe? And I'm like, I think you'll be fine. So it was funny that Carmel reached out to me about this work, and over 2 years, we sowed seeds through events just like this. That's what we're doing right now. We're planting seeds. These ideas, these stories are seeds that I hope are being sown into your soul and will germinate over time and blossom into something beautiful in each and every one of your lives. And that together we build something beautiful here in Shelbyville. So Carmel eventually hosted, they said, we want to host a gathering. And so we gathered people from across the country here for the Civility Summit that just happened in September. And other communities across the country said, I want to do the same thing. So it is this exciting, grassroots, locally led movement afoot. And I invite you to dream with me about what that could look like here as well. But I don't want to just tell you about it. I want to show you how much fun we had building this in Carmel. Go ahead. Thank you. Maybe you could Google it or go to YouTube maybe.
Okay.
Anyone know what kind of bird that is? Let's pass the time, shall we? Search in YouTube how a civic renaissance began. I think that's it. No birders here? Yellow bird. There you go.
We figured it out. What you think of this not just as another meeting or another conference. We resonate with me and think of it as the launch of a road. What is the difference? Define civility, which is the idea of people what?
Working government has right people who were extremely hostile on one hand and then extremely polite and boys on the other. Politeness is manners, it's behavior, it's etiquette, it's technique. Civility is a disposition of the heart, it's internal. It boys see others as our moral equals that sometimes requires respecting them enough to be impolite, telling them a hard truth, engaging in robust debate.
It was January 10th, 2024, when Alexandra Hudson, the author of The Soul of Civility, it was a roadmap that guided me to ask her to come to Connor Molson's. And look where we are, that Miss Algebra.
A decade of work and a lifetime of thought, I had a flourish across the difference.
Very grateful to be part of this. I really doubt her and not only for her success, but for the fact that she's committed herself to one of the more important subjects. I would always say we need to show respect for our Politeness, whether that respect is returned or not. Like the at some lad now up for quite some time can really watch her blossom. Well, I said her own financial promise. So you just got here for this Macy.
I've been honored to see civic leaders from across the country, across location, across geography, across politics, use my book as a hymn to navigate in simply a divide and time separate.
And he said, hey, and we do it with you?
Every person in America needs to read the Soul of Civility.
We've been trying to do this thing called life together with others for a very long time. As long as we're around, in fact, as a species, we are dominated to social. We fly, you become fully human in community and in relationship with others. As long as we've been around as a species, community has moved on. Conflict does have to spell the end of relationships, that the goal of life with others is to never have conflict. Conflict is an inevitable part of relationships and less of ours. That conflict can actually be a source of strengthening bonds that we have with others. Are we respecting the other? Are we engage in a debate or debate? And even people with hateful views and deeply wrong in a society deserve a very level of respect. Even if we go vehemently different from other people, how we still have those conversations. And that's why Big Leslie's book is so 40. And we are never going to perfectly be great, but we can control ourselves. We have minimal power that we realize.
So that's my invitation to each of you. Please dream with us. See this evening right here, right now as not an end in itself, but a beginning, a renewed invitation, a renewed commitment to the life well lived with others, which is hard. It's a fickle thing, other human beings. It is the hardest thing. It's the best thing at the same time as well. And our goal is not to do it perfectly all the time, but it's to get back up and keep trying. And I'll leave you with an example of when I fell short of this quite recently. A car dealership promised me my car was sent home fixed. It was not. And I was disappointed and mad. I called. I asked for them to kindly do the things I had paid them to do. They kindly asked me to go away. I got madder. I left a review that was not kind. And it stuck with me. I kept wanting to escalate more and more. I kept feeling more and more powerless. I thought getting meaner and meaner and writing nastier reviews was going to make me more powerful and to show them and bring them back to the bargaining table and honor their agreement to do what they'd promised they would do. And I felt myself getting uglier inside and weaker inside. And this sat with me especially today, mostly because my car has been not working and sitting on the side of my road in front of my house, piled with snow for like weeks now because it's not fixed. And so it was partially like that eyesore and like the IMPD coming to my door and saying my car was going to get towed if I didn't move it. So partially that, needing to move my car, and partially knowing that I was going to be standing in front of you tonight. And I wanted to do it knowing that I deserve to be up here and I live out my ideals, because I didn't live out my ideals in that moment with the car dealership service manager. So I called him today and I said, Tom, I'm sorry. I said, Tom, words were said and I'm not proud of them. That was not my best moment. I know that wasn't your best moment, but I want to own my responsibility in that exchange, and I want to make it right with you. I want to walk my walk, and I don't want to be out in the world talking about this work and not living it myself. I said, will you forgive me? And graciously he accepted. And I felt this weight of relief in my body, just like a lightness of spirit that's hard to describe. I think the human soul craves reconciliation. It craves wholeness, even with people that we may never see again or don't have to see again. Like I never had to talk to this guy again if I didn't want to. But there was something about that exchange that made me feel whole and right being with you here tonight. And so the goal is not perfection. I share that with you, not to virtue signal, but to share with you that we're going to fail. To be human means we're going to fail. Alexander Pope said it well. He said, to err is to be human. To forgive is divine. We're not going to agree. We're going to make mistakes. Others are going to hurt us because of their fallenness and their mistakes. And our response ought to be fluency in asking and receiving forgiveness, which is so hard to do because our pride wants us to hang on to the bitterness and hang on to our own perfectly correctness. But I feel so freed being released of that burden today. And I invite you to reflect in your own heart. Where's a forgiveness that I can extend to someone? Or who is someone that I should ask forgiveness from? And you won't regret it. I love this line from Miroslav Volf. Will you please click? Miroslav Volf is a theologian who lived through the civil war in former Yugoslavia and has a lot of thoughts on pluralism, especially religious pluralism. And he says, forgiveness flounders because I exclude the enemy from the community of humans, even as I exclude myself from the community of sinners. It's always easier to see the faults of others before our own. And I'll leave you with the words from Erasmus of Rotterdam, one of my favorite thinkers from the Protestant Reformation. He's an unsung hero of moderation. He didn't succumb to the excesses of the kind of the vicious rhetoric of the Protestant Reformation, and also never left the Catholic Church, even though he loved the church enough to criticize it. And as a result, he's totally forgotten today. So much more to say about Erasmus, this beautiful unsung hero of moderation. But, he wrote this gorgeous book on manners for kids during the Middle Ages that was a runaway bestseller. And the final maxim of his book, he says, readily forgive the faults of others and avoid falling short yourself. Readily forgive the faults of others and avoid falling short yourself. That's my invitation to you, and my invitation to you to dream about what a civic renaissance in Shelbyville could look like. But I'm honored you're here. Thank you for braving the cold, and a privilege to be with you. Thank you for having me.
My mic on?
Just project, Ralph.
There we
I
go.
know you've got it in you.
There we go. Okay. Thank you all. So we're going to have a little bit of Q&A for those of you that may have questions. I'll bring the mic around and I'll try and go as quick as I can. But also, let me say this. When Lexi came, one of the things that she had in mind that she described to me was this idea of a civic renaissance. And she doesn't know what Shelbyville needs. She doesn't know what Shelbyville is looking for, what our city is looking for, what the people here are looking for. Sure, we read about it on Let It Out Shelbyville and plenty of other things, We know what people are upset about, and they tell us about it. But she doesn't know that. Tomorrow is the Leadership Roundtable. That's an opportunity for us to come together to talk about Shelbyville-specific things, to figure out how leadership can look, civil leadership can look in this community, how it can look going forward. Not politically aligned, but civil leadership, what it looks like when we look for the human dignity in the person and create that path going forward. And Lexi's going to be here tomorrow to help us kind of start that conversation, help us articulate what we need to know, how we have to create a vision and kind of move forward. And so 2 for the price of 1. We got it for 2 days. So I encourage you all to be here tomorrow. And it doesn't matter if you're a leader in some capacity or you're a leader in another capacity. If you lead your home, be here.
Yeah.
If you lead a church, be here.
Yeah.
We want you here because your voice matters. And you're going to end up in conversation with people in this community that are going to have a very different opinion. And so it's important that we learn these very, I guess I want to say timeless character traits. Sorry. Where did I go to school, right? Character traits that can carry us forward. But enough about me and my lisp. Let's start the Q&A. Anybody have questions? Raise your hand, I'll come to you. Yes, give me a sec. Oh, let me turn you on.
And tell me your name and, a little bit about you first. I'd love to get to know you.
My name is Jenna Martin. I work for the city, and I married into a family that's multi-generational here. So there's a lot of different facets of Shelbyville that I'm able to see, which is great. But my question is more about theory to practice. So If you're somebody that is interested in practicing civility, having civic discourse, but you find yourself in a room with those that are hostile and maybe aren't even interested in having civic discourse, do what do you do in that situation? Do you say, okay, well, there's not a situation I can think of where then all of a sudden the conversation's moot. Um, and if you know that that person has not necessarily wanted to be invited into that, like, I think that's the piece of the civic renaissance I was really interested to hear a little bit about on how um, anybody in the room having whatever conversation, whether it's at the Thanksgiving dinner
Yeah.
or if it's on social media or wherever,
Mhm.
how do you invite them in, or do you then politely say, I guess I'm not, I don't want to have that conversation. I don't know.
I think it's a great question, and thank you for being here. It's Jenna, right? Thank you for being here, Jenna. And I approach things kind of jurisdictionally, like not all places are equal. Like the Thanksgiving dinner table is not equal to a university classroom, is not the same as a town hall, is not the same as a city council meeting, right? These are different venues. It's not the same as a church, congregation. There are different venues designed for different things. And some are more or less appropriate to have these conversations. So I guess is there a specific instance that you want to drill down on? Like, is this in your work with the city and you find yourself around other hostile people? Like, do you want to drill onto one, or I can just?
Well, I was told I should save that.
Are you coming tomorrow, Jenna? Are you coming to the round table? 9 a.m.
Actually,
9 a.m.
it's scheduled the same time as the State of the City. So there's going to be
I
a
thought
lot
the
of.
State of the City was 11:30.
Yes, I run it. So I'm behind the scenes. So I wish. Sorry. I guess to get I guess higher level. So I feel like today's conversation's been very higher level. And I think to kind of generalize, if there's a situation where person A isn't being polite, they want to, be civic. Like, hey, what is happening or how you're going about it is incorrect, but not what you're thinking, not you as an individual, but like how you're going about it is incorrect. Like you're wanting to address it so that you could have a conversation.
Right.
And that person or persons are very hostile about it.
Right.
How do you address that? Do you walk away from that and don't continue the conversation? How do you practice civility
Yeah.
when you're trying to have a joint solution?
Right.
Mhm.
The core thing to remember is that, again, you cannot control others. You can only control yourself. So if someone's coming at you and they're being vicious, they're spewing hate, and it is obviously, more emotional than constructive criticism that is seeking the good and flourishing of the city. Like, you respecting yourself, civility, the obligation of civility requires drawing that boundary. Like that's, it could involve drawing that verbal boundary. Like, this is not how we engage. This is not constructive. Or it can involve literally walking away and say, like, let's revisit this when we've had a moment to calm down, and one thing that I recommend over and over and over again, like, we have a crisis of misplaced meaning in our world right now. Traditional touchstones of meaning. So I want to broaden your view for a second, because I know you're in the weeds with, conflict day in, day out.
Broad answer is totally fine.
Yeah,
I feel like
but
across the country, everything is very polarized.
Right.
And there are misplaced feelings.
So I want to broaden the view for a second. Like, over the last several decades, these traditional touchstones of meaning, like church, like family and friendship, these have been markedly on the decline. And people are increasingly finding their meaning in politics. Nature abhors a vacuum, there's this Scottish theologian whose work I reflect on in the final chapter of my book, which is on misplaced meaning and forgiveness. His name is Thomas Chalmers. And he has this beautiful essay called the the expulsive power of a new affection. And what that means is he says, like, it's not enough. And this logic here applies to many venues of life. He says, if you have an unhealthy attachment to something, a sin, a behavior, like he's a theist, he's a theologian, so he's talking about sin, but it could be, Overeaters Anonymous, it could be any compulsion, it could be Alcoholics Anonymous. Like if you have an unhealthy addiction or love, it is not enough to say, love, stop, heart and soul, stop loving that thing in an unhealthy way. Like that's just not how the human soul and body is created. Like you have to replace it with something better and more beautiful. This is like Alcoholics Anonymous 101. You can't just stop drinking alcohol. You have to like replace what alcohol filled with like more noble and beautiful and healthier habits and things. And, we have this crisis of misplaced meaning where people are turning to politics instead of these traditional, like healthier touchstones of meaning, like friendship and church and community. And there are 3 symptoms of this misplaced meaning that I see. One is the ubiquity of politics. There's much that is the same about this problem. It's a timeless challenge. And yet this is new. Like we all of a sudden all have smartphones and our 24/7 media culture. And like every restaurant we walk into, there's like television blaring at us. Even my gym locker room has like news on. And I'm like, give me a break. Like I don't want this. But it's everywhere. Politics is everywhere in a way that it hasn't been, 5, 10, 20 years ago. And so that's one symptom of this crisis of misplaced, that we're oversaturated with it. We're overdoing democracy and undermining democracy. Another crisis of our misplaced meaning is how quickly our lizard brains are activated in everyday conversation. Like people go from 0 to 60 at the mere mention of their sacred cow issue, whatever that is. And you're like, where did that come from? Like they just become apoplectic. But it's because they have made whatever that issue is so central to their identity that even just, a whiff of disagreement feels like an attack on the essence of who they are. And that's not rational, like prefrontal cortex. That's like primitive lizard brain in fight or flight. That is bad for democracy, bad for our souls, bad for democracy for obvious reasons. It's that sort of response is the enemy of reasoned deliberative discourse that democracy relies on. And bad for our souls for obvious reasons too, to have our identity be about political leaders or political issues that are ultimately going to fail us. They're going to disappoint us. To have our identity so intermingled in such fickle and temporal things. The third crisis of this misplaced meaning is the tragic number of friendships, of lifelong relationships or family relationships that have been strained or severed over political disagreement. People turning their back on loved ones by saying, you voted for this person or you have this view, therefore no contact. I cannot have you in my life. That is emblematic of disordered loves. We have elevated political and public issues to the level of the most important and beautiful things in life. Sacred things like relationships with loved ones, and that is not how it should be. And so what do we do about it? We have this crisis of misplaced meaning, and it's destroying our democracy and destroying our souls. What do we do? It's not enough just to say, soul, love politics less, love this, care about this political issue less. That's not how the soul works. We have to replace it with something more noble and better and more beautiful. I give a few examples in the final chapter of my book. I talk about friendship, recovering friendship and cultivating friendship, especially friendship across difference. And how friendship is really the seedbed to have those difficult conversations. You can't just show up and do the hard thing of democracy when it's time to have the debates without that foundation of trust and basic affection for the other. That takes work. So for example, yes, as Ralph mentioned, I had my first session last night with the Texas state legislature, who is reading my book right now. It's very hot, very spicy. You think it's spicy in Shelbyville. It's spicy in the Texas state legislature, very divided. And the interesting thing is they meet every 2 years. That fascinates me. So there are like, some members of the House who don't see each other for 2 years. And then they show up and have to like pass bills and work together. And that's just not how we're built. We're built for a relationship. We're built for trust. And we're built like you can't just manufacture trust and affection on command. It's a lifestyle. It has to be cultivated. And that is on an ongoing basis by everyone here in this room. And that is very much the vision of what Ralph and I are trying to build with each of you in this room. Like, what does a sustainable, ongoing commitment to this way of life, of seeing, knowing, loving the other, of seeking the good of the other, of showing up for the other, not just when we need something and not just when there's a hard conversation to have, but all the time. And that makes all the difference in the world for when there are those hard conversations, because you have that foundation of trust to fall back on. So friendship across difference. I talk about intellectual curiosity, reading a book, like nurturing your mind. I think we're so intellectually stifled. I think the news and there's so many things to blame, but like get offline, get off TikTok and like, read a book or like nurture your mind in some other way, create, paint, whatever your creative spirit is calling for, like do that, like just do something that nourishes you, heart, soul, and mind. I talk about beauty and the sublime. Something beautiful is something that like pleases us. The sublime is something far more severe. It instills fear in us. It's the, ferocity of a thunderstorm, the waves crashing on the shore. It's like that feeling I used to get as a little girl at night falling to sleep, and I would contemplate infinity and space. And I would literally have to like stop my mind, because I would just like, it would scare me. It would frighten me. This like, what is infinite? Like something that I couldn't wrap my head around. And the mysteries of the universe, like that is the sublime. I'll raise your hand in this room. How many people in the history of humankind have gone to space? Just take a guess. Any guess? No wrong answers, but yeah, there are wrong answers. 200, okay. 500? 60? It's like 800. So more than maybe some of you thought, but without fail, each of these 800 astronauts have gone to space and come back irrevocably changed. And scientists, like they studied this change, and they dubbed it the overview effect. They came back better human beings. They had been to space, and they looked down at our small, tiny planet. And in fact, any Star Trek fans here? A few of you? There's William Shatner went to space, and he wrote this lovely article about his experience in space. I commend that to each of you, a first-hand experience of this overview effect that I'm describing for you. So he went to space, and he looked, and he describes looking down and seeing our beautiful planet, vibrant green and blue, suspended in the abyss, vacuous, lifeless, dark, nothingness. And it filled him with terror and humility and joy and awe and sadness all at once. And from space, there were no borders. There were no language divides. There were no Republicans or Democrats. All of these things that people, there's no race, that people kill for, that people have died for, that are so important to us. And yet from space, none of it matters. Like those differences melt away, and all you feel is a sense of our common humanity. And the reality is we don't have to go to space to encounter the sublime and have those moments that get us out of ourself. The Irish philosopher called Iris Murdoch, she called it, we need experiences that like shake us from our fat, relentless ego. That's what she called it. Things to shake us out of that and give us a broader and higher perspective that allow us to come back and see things differently with greater grace. But again, we're all in survival mode. We're all running on empty emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so there's a good chance that many of these instances that you in this room have seen or experienced, maybe it has nothing to do with you. You're just getting the tail end of someone's bad day or frustration with life in general. And that is a story you can tell yourself. That is more about them than me. They're having a bad day. They're not a bad person. They're having a bad day. What can I do in this moment to make their day a little less bad and not make it worse? My grandmother taught me that. She was so good at telling stories of exoneration. She would tell a story about an interaction that exonerated the other person from guilt. Whereas I am much more likely to tell stories of condemnation. That is not a person having a bad day. That is a jerk that deserves justice. The Larry David in me comes out. So, yeah, I encourage you, take it, and appreciate that broader view, that maybe in that moment, like the thing to do in that tense meeting about the important issue is to go have a walk and talk or a coffee outside or something. Like take your eyes off the issue for a moment and literally talk about anything else. Like the secret to doing politics better now is to do less of it. Like we are doing too much politics. And again, it's bad for society and bad for our souls. And we have to put it in its proper place and recover things in our life that give us joy, that nourish us.
Do we have another question? Anyone? Also, if you're here for CEUs, if those of you that are teachers, Melissa, raise your hand. We have your forms. We can get you one for tonight, or we can get you one for both days. So we got you covered. Any other questions? Yes, Andy.
COVID really did a number on getting us to be together again. And I wonder if you could just speak to how we can overcome those times where we are afraid to get out. We've built up, I just know in COVID, we didn't meet as a church for a year and 2 months. We had sermons on the TV, but we didn't be together for a year and 2 months. And so how can we overcome that, I guess, fear to come together again?
I think it's a great point. We were all of a sudden alone all the time, and our lives were on little screens, and we could have our hair done on top and be wearing pajama pants or no pants, below. And this is the interesting thing about social life. It's a muscle. And I think it atrophied in many important ways during the pandemic, where we're just, we go from being together all the time where we're just trained, we're habituated to modulate our every move, to all of a sudden we can burp in our home and nobody knows. And then all of a sudden we're back in the office and we burp and we're like, wait, I'm not at home anymore. Like that is not okay to do. It's hard. It's hard to like reacclimate. It's a muscle. And I think that we're still rebuilding it, to be honest with you, where we're just not quite reacclimated to how to engage with others in a way that is natural and warm and human. It feels kind of like stifled, and I think we're afraid. Like we're a little bit rusty still, and it's a fearful proposition to put yourself out there and invite someone over for coffee or for dinner or for out to lunch or something. There is some research though that suggests that people are way more amenable to our bids and our invitations than we realize. We have a lot more fear and trepidation about social outreach. We are primed to interpret social rejection as a literal physical threat in our life. It goes back to our, hunter-gatherer era, that if we were rejected from the tribe, that literally spelt death. And so we interpret social rejection as a death threat. Like we were really afraid of it. We fear it a lot, but people are much more receptive than we realize. And the answer to getting better at life together is to do more of it, is to keep trying, is to, we make a mistake, we fail, or someone rejects us or says no, like we don't take them as a sum total referendum of who we are. And we get up and try again. That's what life together requires.
Okay.
Find me after, I think, oh yeah.
Oh, I was just going to ask Wendy Carmel, what's their goals? What are they doing? What projects are they working on?
Yeah. Yeah, they started a nonprofit around the ideas of my book, and they're continuing to host meetings and just keep this events about that. They're doing workshops, and they're keeping this, and there's just a growing interest in this topic. And they're having another civility summit, and they're creating a table and inviting people to the table, and that's wonderful. That is what Carmel's doing. Other communities, they are choosing to read my book at the city council level, or they're putting the children's version of the book in schools. Like this initiative, needs are different, resources are different. It's going to be different, but I get to be doing this work in dozens of communities simultaneously. It's an amazing opportunity just to learn and appreciate people's ingenuity and capability. And so really excited. I hope you can come tomorrow, and we'll put a action plan together. What are the needs and what can we do? And then once we build it, you have to hold each other accountable. You're committed to it. This lifestyle, this commitment to the life well lived together. One book, one speaker is not going to be enough. Again, this evening is not the goal. Your shared flourishing together is the goal. So please join us tomorrow, and let's build something beautiful for the community.
Thanks, Lexi. Yeah. Round of applause.